one day the Prophet ﷺ came out of his house and he entered the masjid and he found a group of his companions sitting in the masjid together, and he asked them, why are you sitting in the masjid? Not in a prayer time, and they said, we just came together to make dhikr for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and study Quran. So he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that I'm not questioning you because I don't believe you, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me, or sent Jibreel who told me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so proud of you. And in the Hadith al-Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, my love is due to those who meet one another for the sake of my glory, and for those who visit one another for the sake of my glory, and give to one another for the sake of my glory. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this gathering one of the gatherings that are attended by the angels, and upon which the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends. I'm also thankful to Al-Hijrah for inviting me, and thank you very much for coming. My presentation today is about Islamic family law in the US context, and I have to warn you in the very beginning, it might be very boring and dry. So if you find it too academic and too dry, let me know. In the very beginning, I have to say that I don't promise you to answer every question you have in mind when it comes to Islamic family law. And the approach here is more of, or directed or geared towards Islamic, the principle of Islamic jurisprudence, or usul al-fiqh, rather than speaking about the fiqh or furu' al-fiqh. So, why Islamic family law? As American Muslims, we want and desire to live Islam in its totality in the American context. So we have questions related to financing. We have questions related to what to eat and what not to eat. We have a question regarding participating in politics and socio-political activities. And we have also many questions regarding our social life. And marriage and family is very essential. So the study is focusing mainly on Islamic family law in the United States context. And you can see a similarity between the context of the United States and Canada and European countries as well. Why Islamic family law? I chose Islamic family law for a number of reasons. One is that Islamic family law is the part of Islamic law that has never been replaced by Western laws. We know in Muslim majority countries, we used to have a Mahakim al-Shar'iyya, and this Mahakim al-Shar'iyya has been, after Western colonialism, has been replaced with Western, British or French legal systems. The only part of the Islamic law that remained original or derived mainly from Islamic legal tradition is the Islamic family law. Right? So this is the case in almost every Muslim majority country. Islamic family law comes from Quran and the Sunnah, and perhaps one of the madhahib or bunch of madhahib. Like in Egypt, for example, the main madhab was the Hanafi madhab, but in the 60s and 70s, Sheikh Muhammad Abu Zuhra talked about this. He was the head of the committee that regulates Islamic family law, or Ahwal al-Shakhsiyya, and he made it very clear that although he admires the Hanafi madhab so much, but because of the dramatic change that came to the Egyptian society, then one madhab cannot actually serve the interests of the Egyptian community. And it is noticeable that although all Muslim majority countries derive the Islamic, the family law from Islam mainly, you will never find two Muslim majority countries have or apply the same exact identical Islamic family law. Principles are the same, but when it comes to the madhahib and opinions, every country, every community chooses from all these ocean of opinions, if you want, and madhahib, what actually fits their own local culture. So Islamic family law in Egypt is different from Islamic family law in Morocco, different from Islamic family law in Jordan. I'm not speaking about the essentials. The essentials are the same, but the details of the law are different. So the law adopted as it is adopted by the Egyptian society is different from the choice is made by the Jordanian, for example. And this tells you something important, that we sometimes think that religion comes and affects society. It's one-way street. But the reality is, for those of you who studied sociology, you will understand that it's true, religion affects a society or the culture of the society, but also the local culture affects how religion is understood and realized and implemented. And that's why, so this tells you that although the principles of Islamic law, the shara'i', the unchangeable part of the law, don't change based on time and places, but the fatwa, the opinions developed in a certain society actually is made based on, of course, the source, the Quran and the Sunnah, but also the local culture, which actually bring us to the main point here, which is, as American Muslims, we have our own unique and totally different context, right? So I was born and raised in Cairo, in Egypt, but coming here, becoming American citizen, we have totally different cultural, legal, economical, political context, right? So the fatwa that can fit a Muslim family in Egypt might not necessarily fit here. So as American Muslim, Islam, what's unique about Islam is that Islam is a multicultural, global religion. Islam, as some said in China, looks very Chinese. Islam in Africa is a very African religion. So Islam always mixed with the local culture and produce a particular realization and practice of Islam in this particular local culture. I'm not suggesting, as some misunderstand, that there are multiple Islams. There's only one Islam. But again, people make choice, fiqhi choice, based on their local culture, or local culture affect their choice of the legal opinions. It's very interesting, just to show how Islamic family law is so significant in the life of Muslims. As an Imam for 20 years now, I've observed that we usually divide them into practicing and non-practicing Muslims. I'll use this terminology just for the sake of clarification, although they are not very accurate. But those who don't come to the masjid at all, there are so many Muslims, unfortunately, they never come to masjid, except in two cases. Right? One is marriage. The second is funeral. Right? So when people want to get married, or when they want their daughters or sons to get married, they want this marriage to be done in the most traditional way, in the masjid. Right? And funeral for known reason. Right? I've seen people never come to the mosque except when their father passed away, so they come to the masjid to do the funeral prayer, and then they take the body to the cemetery. But I've also noticed that many quote-unquote secular, liberal, far-left, non-practicing Muslims, at the time of marriage, they want marriage to be done according to the traditional, traditional way, because marriage always gives us sense of belonging, dignity, honor, and give us social and religious identity. And that's why marriage in Islam requires legal and social validation. So we know my daughter got married to this man. So, this removes any doubt, does not bring any shame to the family. So that's why marriage is important, and Islamic family law is very essential to the life of Muslims wherever they are. Then I will talk very briefly, as brief as I can, about the internal and external challenges that we face when it comes to understanding and implementing Islamic family law in the United States. The internal challenges that I'm going to talk about has to do with our own issues within the American Muslim community. One of them is cultural understanding of Islamic family law. People, before they get married, they don't go and read what does Islamic law say about khitbah and mahr and nikah and marriage contract and rights and response. Nobody does. Very few. Very few. But mass majority of people understand the mahr and nikah and the relationship between the couples during the time of engagement, and then katb al-kitab or nikah, and then when the time comes for the consummation of marriage. it's kind of understood from the culture, not from studying Islamic family law. I've asked actually many highly educated people before at the time of marriage, as I've officiated so many marriages, may Allah forgive me, and help us all to understand the responsibility of marriage. I asked them, did you study any book? Did you read any book in Islamic law about Islamic family law? They said, no. Why is that? It's either because there's no materials, or there's no time, or people are not interested. Before you go for Hajj, if you have never done Hajj before, it's very wise to read some books about what Hajj is, tawaf and sa'i and different kind of ihram and what you need to do. You need to have understanding of the fiqh of Hajj, or attend a workshop, listen to lectures, and so on, right? But before we get married, I would say the mass majority of Muslims, they don't bother actually to read any book in Islamic family law. The second, because we have our own multiculturalism within the American multiculturalism, we have different cultures, and intercultural marriage happen all the time. So people come from, the man from this culture and the woman from the other culture, and people sometimes they have some difficulties. And we're talking today with Brother Saif about different local customs and traditions. This girl comes and said, this brother, mashallah, is good Muslim and practicing Muslim, and he wants to marry me, but my parents refuse simply because he's not from the same nationality. And we go and talk to the father and talk to the mother, and sometimes one of the two is more flexible, but they said, no way that our daughter will marry someone, even if he is so righteous, does not matter. Right? So people have different cultural and customary understanding of what or how marriage should be conducted. So this multiculturalism in of itself could be a source of enrichment of the community, but sometimes when cultures come together, sometimes they don't know how to coexist. Also, we have our own legal diversity. We all know the diversity of madhahib and opinions and so on. This imam says halal, the other imam says haram. This madhab says it's okay, that madhab says no, it's not okay. So legal pluralism is a healthy phenomenon. However, because we live in all these madhahib and opinions, right? So people always think that this opinion or this culture is the right one and everything else is wrong. So we try to always, for the sake of protecting our identity, to always accuse others of being wrong. In the absence of a central legal authority in America, we don't have one mufti that gives fatwa and every Muslim in America follows, right? We don't have this. Even within the local communities, we may have 2 masjids and 2 or 3 or 4 different scholars or imams, and everyone give different fatwa, right? So the fact that we have legal diversity and cultural diversity makes our understanding or interaction when it comes to family law little problematic. And of course, the question of legal authority is a huge question in the Muslim world in general, and for us particularly here. So when it comes to the legal authority, who has, why is that people always go to the masjid or invite an imam to officiate the marriage, right? Can anyone who is not officially an imam get 2 people married? The answer is yes. If he understands the basic rules, it doesn't have to be the official imam, right? But it's always good to have an imam doing this and giving advice and speech and blessings and so on. But people always look up to the imams for conducting marriage or for family counseling when there's conflict within the family and so on. So we have imams, scholars, council of jurisprudence, and academicians. Imams are the first point of contact. When people have issues, they want to get married, they just run to the imam, which is very normal. But not every imam necessarily is well trained in Islamic family law. This is another subject that we can talk about later on, but not every imam is well trained and well versed with understanding of the depth of Islamic family law and the khul'a and talaq and custody and so on and so forth. So there are some scholars who are not imams, and some imams are not scholars. And there are councils of fiqh, they issue fatwa regarding family cases. And there are some academicians, some of them are totally disconnected the community, but they write very good books, very good articles, academic articles on the subject, but unfortunately, no one reads them. They write it for only academicians and people in the field to read it, but it does not come down to the community. So these are the main internal issues when it comes to Islamic family law, which understanding, which interpretation, which madhab we should follow, and so on. I have a real case when the boy was born in America, but he's coming from Egyptian family, and the girl is coming from the Indian Muslim family. Both grew up here, they were born and raised here, mashallah, successful in their career. But at the time of marriage, there were some issues. The two families disagree over who should officiate the marriage, which imam. Now, this Hanafi imam here or the Egyptian imam, right? What kind of relationship they should have in the time of engagement? Can they just go out together or they cannot? After the nikah, before the consummation of marriage, can they go out together? Some say, no. According to our tradition, we don't do it this way. We do it that way. The mahr, how much the mahr should be. All right. So, of course, the family of the boy want to make the mahr as low as possible, and the family of the girl, they want to make the mahr as much as possible. So all these things play out at the time of marriage. So when it comes to the external challenges for us to understand and implement Islamic family law, to me, number one is the concept of liberalism. Liberalism is a political theory. It existed in the 17th and 18th century, and then became popular in the West. That basically tried to free people from monarchy and the powerful church. So liberation, as you all know, means to free people from any external institutions. And these institutions could be the church, the religious institution, or the government itself, and the family, and the local custom. To free people, let people choose. So when we talk about liberalism, the cornerstone principles in liberalism are freedom, equality before law, all people are equal, and all ideas and opinions are equal. Then we talk about individualism. Everyone has his own entity, and you can make your own choice, live any kind of life you choose, of course, as long as you don't harm others. We talk about rationalism. Everything is rationalized. All right? So in the United States, of course, in the political aspect, constitutionalism, democracy, election, human rights, all the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, these are all coming from this philosophy of liberalism. This is the good side of liberalism, right? But the bad side of liberalism is that it's based on speculation. The question in liberalism, not whether my opinion is right and your is wrong, it's my opinion is right to me and your opinion is right to you. I respect you, you respect me. Lakum dinukum waliya din. Right? And your opinion is as valid, as respected as my opinion. So the question of who's right and who's wrong is not the question of liberalism. Liberalism wants to ensure that everybody has his own or enjoys his own opinion and lifestyle. So there's a good side of liberalism. That's why I made a presentation in one of the conferences, and the title was, "Is liberalism our best friend or our worst enemy?" We are here now in this very masjid, enjoying this freedom of religion, practicing our religion, thanks to liberalism that give us a constitutional right to build our mosques, to practice Islam the way we see fit. Nobody can intervene. No government or judge or court can say, no, you are making Isha wrong, or you cannot collect zakah, or you cannot celebrate Ramadan or Eid. No one has anything to do with our freedom of religion, right? So in one way, liberalism is good because it's giving us all this freedom of religion, expression, and so on. But it is, on the other side, also makes everything equally valid, right? And that's why when we look at our youth, our children who grew up here, they always think about themselves, individualism. I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. It's my life. It's my choice, right? It's my body. It's my money. It is my. Everything has to revolve around me, right? Whereas in the Islamic culture, the interest of the community comes ahead of the interest of the individual. Here, the right of the individual is so significant. So, without going any further in the philosophy of liberalism, liberalism has some, merits, but also makes us as religious community, all religious communities and Muslim community also, we sometimes look at the other side and look like we are outdated, we are close-minded, we are pre-modern, right? She loves this man, so love is more holy than what the Quran says to them, right? If we know that according to Islamic law, a Muslim woman cannot marry non-Muslim, right? That's well established in the Quran, right? But from liberal perspective, she can marry anyone she wants. It's her choice, right? We know in Islam, adultery is strictly haram, right? And homosexuality is strictly haram. You cannot just argue on this because Quran is very clear on this. But from liberal individual perspective, this is her body and this is his body. They can do whatever they want. And this became like that normal now. Dating and people sleep with each other without any restriction because, we would call it consensual sexual relationship. If both are happy with this, khalas, it's absolutely legal. So this is the dichotomy that we have to look at. We as Muslims, we are proud of our religion. We get our limits, our hudud from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. But this actually, from the society perspective, this makes us look like we are backward. We have to defend ourselves. We have to rationalize Islam. Why zina is haram? This is adult people make a choice, so what's wrong with that? And we sometimes get into this trap of trying to rationalize everything. And believe me, no matter how eloquent and try to play smart with this, you will not be able to convince others through rational thing. Oh, zina is haram because of this and because of that. Ya akhi, it's haram because Allah said so. If you want to elaborate on why and how it harmed the society, then you can go to academic work that really proves that kids are more physically and mentally healthier when they grow up in a family, with a man and a woman. The definition of family itself, the definition of family has dramatically changed in the last 50 years in America. When you say family, what's family? A man and a woman and children. So it does not need actually definition. You don't have to define family because family cannot be anything other than this. But now in America, because thanks to liberalism, it is who defines family? Everybody defines family. Like 2 men and 1 woman, or 4 women, 1 man, and anything that could be family. Who are you to define family? The government has no right to define family. Although polygamy is still prohibited, and people actually are very confused. So if you allow people to build their own families, so what's wrong with polygamy then? So we are a confused nation, by the way, in general. When it comes to family law, America is a very confused nation. So liberalism caused a social change, huge social change. No one 100 years ago or even 50 years ago have ever thought homosexuality would be legal and acceptable and normal. The change is happening quickly. That's very dangerous. Very dangerous. The definition of family is up in the air. Everybody has the right to interpret what family is. The structure of the family changed, and the functionality of the family also changed. As a result of this change in social norm comes the change in legal norm. And this, by the way, for those of you who study legal sociology, you'll find out that laws always change as the social norm change, right? The law becomes very old and because this is not fitting the new world. So social norm change, the legal norm also change, all right? And there's some truth to this also in Islamic law, as we will speak about al-urf, or custom, and maslaha al-mursala. These things change, and the Islamic law also, as part of flexibility of Islamic law also change based on the change of reality. But there are, of course, unchangeable aspects that never change at all. Like zina is haram at all time and place. This has nothing to do with time and place. Marriage is recommended or wajib. This does not change. Divorce is allowed. That does not change. These principles don't change. But as the social norm changed, the legal norm changed, and this is exactly what happened here in the United States. And the very clear and controversial and astonishing decision by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in 2015 made a decision that same-sex marriage must be respected and legalized. Okay? And interestingly, if you look at the Supreme Court, they have how many judges sitting on the Supreme Court? 9, right? Because at that time, 5 were appointed by Democratic presidents and 4 were elected by a Republican president. So the vote went 5-4. One vote made such huge impact and made the conservative Christians in America outraged. Because to them, it is against the will of God, and to us as well. And this is where we find ourselves, Muslims and conservative Christians, in the same page, or the same side, or the same team. When it comes to family values, we are the same team, right? When it comes to abortion, marriage, and same-sex marriage, and so on, we are on the same side. So it's interesting to know how the vote went. So the Constitution actually says that people have the right to build families. But the definition of what is family, what constitutes family? The 4 Republican or conservative judges said the family, the founding fathers did not have to define what is family because it is known, right? At the time of the founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, people had the right to have families. But they did not say what is family. So now the more liberal judge said that family includes same-sex. People have the right to have families. So that's constitutionally their right. And the other said, no, the Constitution does not say that. But the vote was made, and it is the law of the land. Now, if you are a Muslim judge, right, or you are a Muslim business owner, you have apartments, building, and you are renting it to be. So, and this couple, gay couple, come to you and they want to rent one of your apartments. What would you do? If you own a bakery store and these gay couples come to you and asking you to make cake for their wedding, this is exactly what happened with this case when it happened, I think, in North Carolina, Colorado. So this bakery store, Masterpiece bakery store, they are practicing devoted Christian couples who run this business. And these gay couples came to them asking them to make cake for their wedding. And said, no, we cannot do that because it's against our religious values. Because this relationship is a sin and we cannot take part of this. The other guys went to the court. So, oh, these people are discriminating against us because of our sexual orientation. It went to the court. Guess who won the case? The gay couple. Because this happened after 2015, right? So the court said that you cannot discriminate against people because of religion, race, color, or sexual orientation. Brothers and sisters, we are living in a very scary world. We have to really discuss these things with our kids. That we do not get our values from the society. We get our values from the source. The source is the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. People make choice, up to them. We cannot control how people think, but we can control what we think. But in the mind of many young Muslims, okay, this is what's wrong with that. That's their choice. Yes, of course, when it comes to human rights, right, we don't want anybody to get discriminated against or harmed or killed or injured because of his or her choice. That's their choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of that. But as American Muslims, we have to be super clear about where does Islam stand.
The Supreme Court actually ruled against the Supreme Court overturned the
Yeah, but generally speaking, if you are a judge, you are a Muslim judge or practicing Catholic or Christian judge, and people come to you to officiate the marriage, would you do it or not? If you don't, you're going to lose your job. You're going to get fired. Because this is quote unquote discrimination. So what I want to say that America is now is divided into two camps. One is called conservative and the other is liberal. And we Muslims are somewhere in between. When it comes to family values, we are with the conservative because we are socially conservative. We value family and traditional marriage. But when it comes to human rights, immigrant rights, and all, so on and so forth, we are more liberal, right? So when the legal norm changes, we can see, as one of the writers actually talked about, how the American family law changed gradually from the biblical traditionalism into liberal individualism. Family law in America was made mainly based on the biblical tradition. You know that according to the family law in most, if not all states, that one cannot marry his first cousin. You know that. It's prohibited. If they know that you are the first cousin of her, then they will not officiate this marriage. From Islamic traditional perspective, it is perfectly okay. All right? So where is this coming from? Why it is prohibited? Why is it prohibited in the American legal system? What is the rationale? Because any law has a rationale. Every law comes to serve an ethical value. Right? So this is coming purely from the biblical tradition. All right? So now, the law is you can see dramatic shift from being biblical nation, or the law is coming mainly from the biblical tradition, into the liberal individual. Because again, of the change of the social norm, the law also changed. Now, the second external challenge is that we have two legal systems. When it comes to marriage and divorce and custody, we have to go through two different kinds of systems. We have to go to the county to register the marriage, for the marriage to be recognized by the American legal institutions, and we also come to the masjid, so the Imam will officiate the marriage. So, in the eyes of the community, this is also religiously conducted. So it is legally and religiously correct. Same thing in the time of divorce. We'll talk about this in the end. In the time of divorce, if the husband or the wife filed for divorce and they got the American civil divorce, are they Islamically divorced or not? I have so many cases, and usually women are trapped. Muslim and Jewish women, by the way, in the Jewish tradition also, they call it the get. For the Jewish woman to get the get, she has to go through the rabbis and the Jewish religious institution, begging for them to help her or to help her getting the divorce from her Jewish husband. The same thing, exactly. In Islam, the Muslim woman would file for divorce, she gets it, but the husband said, good for you. You are not divorced, because this kuffar divorce does not count. I did not divorce you, and therefore you are still my wife. So what happens then? So having two legal systems is very problematic for many Muslims. Now, Islamic and American family laws, conflict or harmonization. Of course, we have to point out that when we say American family laws, because American family law varies from one state to another, but in general, the main principles are the same, right? This is not in any way a comparative studies between the two legal systems, but very briefly, Islamic law, Islamic family law is a religious law coming or driven from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, whereas the American family law is a secular, man-made, and nobody ever claimed it is divine or religious. Islamic law is pre-modern. It's established in the 7th century. So you Muslims, you run your family business based on a law made in the 7th century? What kind of people are you, right? So the use of the term modern, pre-modern, and postmodern now is used in this context. So our law is pre-modern, absolutely. Quran was revealed in the 7th century, and the Prophet ﷺ and the Hadith was collected after this, and the Madhahib in the 2nd and the 3rd Islamic century, and this is the law we follow. Are we ashamed of that? No, because Islamic law in general, by nature, is flexible and able to be renewed. Legal pluralism, that's another huge subject. Does Islam allow multiple madhahib and opinions? Absolutely. How about the American legal system? Can you go to a family court and say, okay, we're Muslims, so can you please, do this divorce based on the Shafi'i or Hanbali? Of course not. Get out of here. Because of the establishment clause in the First Amendment, no government institution can prefer or make laws based on a particular religion's principles, right? So we have one law. Every state has its own family law that goes for Christians, for Muslims, for believers, for non-believers, for Hindus, for anybody. One law fits all, right? Am I right? But how about Islamic law? Islamic law, actually, you'll be surprised to know that legal pluralism is the norm in Islam. In other words, the government, the Khalifa, the Imam, the political authority have no right to impose a particular madhab on people. Abu Ya'la al-Farra, in his book Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyya, said that, and Qudam al-Maqdisi and others, they said if the political authority hired a judge based on the condition that he will make judgments based on Hanafi, let's say, or Shafi'i madhab, he has no right to do that, and if he hired a judge with this condition, the condition is invalid. In other words, the judge must judge based on the truth, and the truth could be found in any madhab, not necessarily in one madhab. So the government has nothing to do with the intellectual activities going on in the community. So a brilliant man like Abu Hanifa would create a methodology, and he has students, and he established a school of thought. Another brilliant man with the name of Al-Shafi'i, for example, a student of Imam Malik, he disagreed with this methodology and established his own methodology. And it's up to the people to choose. The government does not tell people you have to worship based on Hanafi or based on Maliki. The government has nothing to do with this. You have multiple imams, and people follow any imam they want. This is the legal pluralism within the Islamic community, but Muslims also showed great deal of tolerance and acceptance to other religious communities to practice their own family law based on their own religion. The best example is Rasulullah ﷺ when he came to Medina and he wrote the constitution of Medina, if you want, and it clearly said the Jews is one community, they have their own Sharia, they, their religious leaders rule based on their own Sharia. We cannot impose Islamic law in the Jewish minority, right? And Muslims have shown great deal of tolerance and acceptance all the time. The Ottoman Empire established what's known as the Millet law. The Millet law means that every millah, every religious community has its own family court. Not only that, but when Muslims actually went to Iran and Iraq, and there were some Zoroastrians, and according to their tradition, it's not only permissible, but is highly recommended to practice, what do you call it? Incest. Incest means a man can marry his sister, mother, daughter, aunt. That's highly recommended to keep the community together. So Muslims actually encountered this situation and said, what am I going to do with this? Right? Because Islam says people follow their own Sharia, you cannot impose Islam. But what kind of Sharia is this? That's disgusting, it's evil. And so Muslims discussed this, Muslim scholars, and the conclusion was that if this is their Sharia, let them do it. But we as Muslims, we cannot take part of this. We cannot officiate or recognize this marriage, but we are not going to stop them from doing this since this is their Sharia. So legal pluralism or accepting other religious tradition is the norm in Islam. But in the American legal system, and this is what I really want you to pay attention to, although the American family law in any state does not entertain legal pluralism or allowing multiple legal systems to work at the same time, like in India, for example. In India, Indian Muslims go to the Indian family court based on Islamic law, and another court for other people, right? So here in America, we have what we call two ideologies. From legal perspective, purely legal perspective, jurists do not believe in legal pluralism. It's just one law fits all. But sociologists and anthropologists, yes. So I'm talking about American family laws. How many legal systems of family laws here in America? So if people, Muslim people or Jewish people want to get divorced based on Islamic or Jewish laws, where would they go? No, I'm talking about divorce. Not marriage is easy, but divorce is different. I actually I'm going to talk about where does American legal system allow what they call sub-state laws to work out in the remaining part of my presentation. All right, so the bottom line here is that although from purely legal perspective, it's only one law in every state, regardless of your religion, but I would say that the American legal system is extremely flexible and allows actually other sub-state laws to work within the American legal system. And here is, we passed this already. We have tribunal, a Roman Catholic Church, applying the canon law, and we have also the rabbinical courts in Orthodox Jewish community also allowing the halakha law or Mosaic law. But these laws are practiced within the local community, but it has to get approved by the state law. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. Imams also resolve disputes, and when two people come to me, for example, they have a dispute, and they accept me as an arbitrator, I actually make people sign an agreement before I waste my time. I have many cases, husband and wife dispute, and I ask them, would you accept my judgment? Because you came to me voluntarily. I did not force you to come to me. You came to me. I'm going to spend a lot of time for free, right? But I have to make a conclusion. Would you accept? They said, yes. I write it down. These people came to me and they accept my arbitration, whatever decision I make, and they sign. This becomes legally binding documents. Okay, so when I make a decision, it's enforced not by my authority, by the authority of the law. So the law allows this kind of a mediation or arbitration to work out, as long as the finding or the judgment of the imam or the rabbi does not contradict the state law or the public policy. So the question here is that Islamic family law does play a role in the US family courts. This is how. So there's no contradiction between what we are saying. One of the conclusions that I've personally reached, knowing well Islamic family law or Islamic usul al-fiqh or principles of Islamic law, and knowing also something about American legal system, both are very flexible. So that's why they can work together. There's not necessarily conflict between the two, as we will see. So Islamic family law in the United States family courts take part in the court sitting in three instances. One is under the contract law. There are many cases, right, in which the wife would go, for example, in this case, Audatallah versus Audatallah. She actually filed for divorce. And then her lawyer said that there is a separate document that says that he will pay her $10,000 as mu'akhar, or deferred mahar. Now she wants the court to enforce this. And the court actually looked at this not as a religious law, but they looked at it purely from contractual perspective. All right? So if you write a contract on a piece of paper and you put your signature there, then the judge will ask you, did you understand? Did anybody force you to sign this? No. Khalas. This becomes contractual agreement. Whether it's coming from your religion, your culture, your understanding, your mutual agreement, it does not matter. If you apply the contractual law on this, then it becomes binding. So Islamic family law actually finds it, and some judges actually who ignore, because the word mahar is not known. Nobody knows what's mahar. So he asked, what's mahar? This is according to Islamic tradition, Islamic law. It's part of the marriage contract. So three kind of lawyers. One lawyer will throw this out of the court, say that you go to your imam, I'm not here to do any religious dispute, because this is religion, and I have not to do with the religion. The other judge will say, yes, I will apply the contractual legal principle, and that's a contract. I don't care where it's coming from. I will enforce it. Some judges would invite experts. They invite a local imam or a professor of Islamic studies, and they invite them. And they say, what is mahar? Tell me what's mahar. What was the expectation between the two parties when they signed this? And the experts will give his or her testimony, and then the judge will make judgment based on that. So American legal system actually recognizes Islamic contracts even in American legal setting. The second case when Islamic law is recognized is as a foreign law. There is an international, almost international agreement that every country respect any contract made based on a law of other country. So if a Muslim man and woman got married in Pakistan or in Saudi Arabia, they will get the marriage contract made based on Sharia, basically. And this is well recognized by American family courts. So it doesn't matter where does this law coming from, or whether Sharia or secular law, but countries respect the laws of each other. And that's why when it comes to immigration, marriage and divorce and so on, they recognize marriage contracts that has been signed somewhere else. And that's the part that I just want to end with, Islamic family law as the ADR, or alternative dispute resolution. Since 2010 and 2000 until now, 95% of disputes are resolved out of the courtroom because of the Access to Justice Act passed in 1998, or 1988 rather. The Congress, to allow people to have access to justice, they said, well, the court has the authority to refer some cases to mediators or arbitrators. So in this case, if two Catholic couple, they have, or Jewish, just to make it easier because divorcing Catholicism is more problematic, two Jewish individuals want to get divorced. So they can go to an institution that makes arbitration based on the Jewish law. And the arbitrator, who is recognized, by the way, and I would encourage some of you actually to take this license, just 6-month course. You can be a mediator, an arbitrator, recognized by the American court. So people come to you, and then you listen to this side and see evidence and witnesses and so on, and then you make judgment based on what you have seen, and also based on your understanding of Islamic law. Once you sign it, if you make it professionally and you write it in a legal language that everybody understands, then the court would recognize this. Again, as long as it's not contradicting with the state law or what's known as public policy. If it does, then the court would not going to accept it. In other words, it's up to us, American Muslims, to have our own institutions that make arbitration based on both American legal system and Islamic law as well. Without writing, oh, this is an Islamic law or Sharia or based on Abu Hanifa's madhab. It doesn't have to be like this, because once you put this terminology, nobody understands, khalas. Right? So yes, in Canada, in fact, all these legal system or legal courts did exist, and Muslims said, well, if the Catholic, they have their own court, and if the Jewish people have their own family court, why don't we establish an Islamic court to deal with all these family issues? And I think the state of Toronto or Ontario said, yes, absolutely, we cannot discriminate against Muslims. But guess who actually stood against this? The majority of those who opposed the idea were Muslims. Many Muslims, Muslim leaders and Muslim feminist groups said, no, 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 no. We don't want this kind of Sharia courts. That's pro-man and anti-woman, and that's, it's not good. So it did not work. It did not work out, right? So what here in the United States, the idea of mediation and arbitration opens the door for Muslims who understand the American legal system and also understand Islamic family law. And they can reach conclusion, because our madhahib, there are plenty of madhahib, right? In a particular case, you'll find some madhahib are almost identical to the American legal system. For example, the idea of custody. Here in America, custody, the judge would look at the best interest of the children. It's not emotional. If the father is, had issues with alcohol or have a criminal history, does not, then they will give the full custody to the mother, or other way around, or sometimes half and half. They look mainly to the best interest of the children, and this is what many fuqaha said. Some said you give them the choice at the age of 7. Kids in the age of 7 did not know how to make a choice. In fact, it happened. One of the judges brought the boy, was 7 or 8 years old, and he told him, you want to go with your father or your mother? He said, no, I want to go with my father. And the judge was just about to tell him, okay, khalas, go with you. He made a choice. That's one opinion. Give a choice to the kids. And the wife actually said, please ask the boy why he chose his father. And the judge said, why did you choose your father? He said, because my mother sent me to madrasa to memorize the Quran, and my father actually let me do whatever I want. So the judge actually changed his mind, right? Because from the judge perspective, the best interest of the child is to be with his mother. So what I want to say is that we should be so proud of the legal legacy we have. Tons of opinions, and some of them are really serve serve justice more than others. So Islamic family law is already there. You know the anti-Sharia movement, and how much time we have? Okay, all right. So they, what we're talking about? The anti-Sharia, Sharia is coming to take over. Sharia is coming to take over? American Muslims are 1% or less, and this 1% is very diverse. And nobody ever, I've never personally heard about any Islamic organization and say, we want Sharia to replace the American legal system. And some people believe that Sharia is coming to take over, and some call it legal jihad, and so all this nonsense, right? So just to scare people from Islam and Muslims. Our legal system, American legal system, is very powerful, very strong, and also flexible. That gives some space, understanding the multiculturalism and multi-religious presence here in America. I will stop here, and I would welcome any comments or questions, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Yes.
Correct me if I phrase my question wrongly. So, if a woman, if a Muslim gets married, but she does not, she makes a nikah, both of them, but she does not register the state court, right, according to state law, would she be able to claim anything against that?
No. That's a very good question. So now most of the imams that I know in most of the states, they do not do the Islamic nikah unless the nikah is registered in the county. The question again, do people have to register the nikah with the government, or they can do what is known as religious marriage? Someone actually came to me. I said, "Oh, Imam, I want you to come to do the nikah, inshallah, tomorrow." I said, "Do you have the marriage license?" He said, "No. We are not interested in this." I said, "Okay, I'm sorry, I cannot do it." And then he asked a question, because this is actually what I studied in depth, al-masalih al-mursalah fil Islam. He said, "Imam, are you adding something to Sharia?" I said, "No, I'm not adding." He said, "Where in Sharia that says that you have to register the marriage?" I said, "Well, there's no textual evidence that says if you are living in the United States of America or a non-Muslim country, then there's no textual evidence. But based on the experience and the maslaha, the public interest or unrestricted interest, we have seen people getting married and they run away. And this poor lady, she has a child or two, and he went to another country, remarried, and he's enjoying his time, his life, but she cannot go to anybody. To preserve the right of the man and the right of the woman and the right of the children, this marriage has to be recognized by the state, because the state can enforce the law. You cannot separate between the law and the enforcement of the law. If you have the best law in the world and you cannot enforce it, so you need a government. You need to have political power to enforce the law. We as Muslims, imams cannot enforce the law. Imams just can give their opinion, right? But we cannot enforce it. We cannot go and arrest him and put him in prison until he pays the child support. So I said, yes, there's no textual evidence, but we're not adding anything from Sharia. Sharia itself actually did preserve the right of everybody. In our context, this is the only way to preserve the right of everyone involved. So we're not adding to Sharia, we understand the spirit of Sharia, the objectives of Sharia, and we understand our reality. And try to serve the best objectives of Sharia. Allahu A'lam. But does this mean if people got married Islamically and did not get married legally, is this marriage valid? Yes, it is valid. If they have relationship, we cannot call this zina, they are married, absolutely. But we discourage people from doing that, for the point I just made earlier. Yes, sir. You go to the county in which you live. Even if they got a Muslim contract, in most of the states it's not recognized. She goes to file for divorce or file for custody or alimony or spousal support. The judge will not look at the case. The judge will not look at the case. In some states, they look at some evidence if they are living for so long together, cohabitation, they call it. They may recognize this, but most of the states, in Michigan, for example, if you did not register the marriage, you have no right whatsoever. No, in the case of Egypt, for example, both the religious and the legal became one process. So not any imam can do the nikah. So the ma'dhoon, they call it ma'dhoon in Egypt. So the ma'dhoon has the responsibility to register this and to file it with the government. So the two processes became one, but here it's not the case. Yes. Any comments? Or yes, please. And for the sisters also, please, if you have any question, please come forward.
To remind everybody that the DC has common law marriage. If you have an Islamic marriage done in DC, because you're holding yourself out in the community to be married, you have a legal marriage.
Okay.
And so if you want to leave that marriage, you're going to have a legal divorce as well as you should.
Okay. That's a very good point. That here, I'm not from here, I'm a visitor. So according to my brother here in DC area, that if you can prove that you are married, got married Islamically, and then the state would recognize that. Okay, common law marriage, okay.
And if you hold yourself out in the community,
Right.
then you're considered common law.
Right. So all these signed papers, witnesses, other evidence, if you have a child, this all actually adds up as clear evidence that marriage was established. Yes.
DC, because Virginia doesn't allow common law.
Yeah, DC.
Yeah.
But if you were considered common law marriage in any jurisdiction under the law of comity, then it would then be valid as a marriage in Virginia. So if you get a common law marriage, yes. Remember, I'm an attorney. If you get a common law marriage in D.C., if you hold yourself out to be married in the community of D.C., and then you move to a non-common law jurisdiction under comity, under the law, Virginia then recognizes absolute marriage.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, the concept of legal comity is to recognize a contract made in other states. Yes.
Different constitution. For example, I'm a medical student. If I want to go to Kentucky, I have not going to get how we call license. What I have right now, I cannot work there. I have to get a license that. So they have different.
That's why every local community, they need to be aware of the family law in their city and their state. Yes. Yes.
They're not stable for court, Islamic court.
Islamic court is a very radioactive, very controversial term. Actually, some, I think, in the South, somewhere, either in Texas, I think in Texas, and some Muslims actually came together. But when you establish an institution called Islamic court, then you are opening the door for all this controversial misunderstanding. People will think that you are really implementing or replacing American law with Sharia law. But if you establish an arbitration institution that run by people who are recognized and certified, who understand both Islamic law and the American law based on the law of the area, and also they know how to write the conclusion in a legal manner, then this will be very much part of the American legal system. Nobody can reject it. But it has to be done as such. Excuse me? No, not as a government. You can start your own business. If you have the license to be a recognized arbitrator, you took all these courses and passed this exam, then you'll be recognized an arbitrator. So people will come to you willingly. People will, because you cannot force people to come to you. So you have an office, you are a business, and then people will come voluntarily because they want to get their separation based on Islamic law. They faithful to Islam and Islamic law. They want to do anything wrong against the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, for this arbitration to be recognized, it has to not violate any local law. Okay? Yes, sir. Okay, we'll take this. Yes, please, we'll come back to you.
So how do you separate family law to Sharia law?
Okay. Family law is a section within a bigger legal system that comes from Sharia.
Family law is part of the Sharia law.
The American family law or the Islamic family law?
Islamic
Okay.
is a part of the Sharia law.
Yes.
So there is no separation.
Okay. Nobody talk about separation. We are talking about Sharia law that is divided into different departments, if you want. A civil law, family law, criminal law, international law. So.
Why I'm saying that? You say that the Sharia law is very sensitive. Our law, based including family law, comes from the Sharia law.
Yes.
There is no way that you can separate.
Who said it's separated?
The way that you
No. Okay, so maybe I did not clarify this point. What I am saying is that Islamic law in America already exists and recognized by American courts. And the three cases I mentioned, one of them is the ADR, arbitration and mediation. If you do mediation, right, as an imam or a Muslim scholar who understands the state law, then you can make judgment or arbitration between two Muslim individuals based on your understanding of Islamic law without contradicting with the state law. Am I clear on this? I'm not saying we separate Islamic family law from Sharia. That's not what I said. What I said, so the confusion perhaps came from what I said, that it's kind of sensitive to the public. When we say Sharia, because of all these campaigns.
Yeah, I may be questioning the wrong way.
Okay.
But in this society, in American society, when you speak Sharia law, it's very sensitive. Is it something that it cannot be equated with the rule?
It's perceived as such, but that's not the case. Mm-hmm.
We do. Everything of our legal Muslim behavior, way we have, comes from the Sharia law.
Sure.
So when he asks you that why we cannot have a court, Muslim court, or Muslim law in the American system, that's where the misunderstanding comes in.
Okay.
Because the Sharia law in this country has been given and shown to the society in the United States that is
controversial, at least, yeah. Okay.
and that's the reason why. So we need someone like you, someone who understands everything out of it, who come there and explain.
Right. I agree with you that American Muslim, we did not do a good job in trying to explain to people what is Sharia. Many Muslims, actually, if you ask them what is Sharia, many are confused. What is Sharia? What's coming from? I teach actually at the university level, and this is part of what we talk about Sharia. When you hear the word Sharia, what do you feel? People, okay, killing. People think about wars and all these things. We as Muslims, we need ourselves to study and to understand what is Sharia, what are the sources of Sharia, the textual evidence and the rational evidence, like I mentioned some of them, and how flexible Islamic law is. We need actually to study ourselves before we explain to others. I agree with you, we did not do a very good job in this area. Yes, sir.
I did want to mention that some of the people in this community know my Sheikh, Dr. Muhammad Al-Hijrah. He has been doing arbitration under the Sharia law in the American courts for 25 years.
Yes, that's what many imams actually are doing, and may Allah bless them all, because I know, I have first-hand experience for 19 years now. Some cases takes hours and hours, tens of hours to get, for example, in my community, someone actually took a loan from someone else, and then after 7 years, the dispute came to me because he thought he gave it to him as a gift, not as a loan, but the other guy said, no, I never give it as a gift. So actually talking to everyone individually, and then talk to witnesses and see evidence and so on, took hours and hours and hours. So Muslim imams are doing this mediation all the time. But in some cases, especially when it comes to divorce, it's a very tough and difficult experience. So going to a qualified imam, and with like Imam Adam Sheikh, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his effort, is very important in these cases. Last question? Yes.
One quick question is this liberalism that we are enjoying, is there a possibility that a woman can make a nikah?
A woman can make a nikah.
Can she process a wedding?
That is actually, this dispute actually came way in our history when the fuqaha talked about whether a woman can be a judge or not. And this is one of the things I personally believe there's no, again, textual evidence says that women cannot be judged or can be judged. We have examples in the Quran. A woman was a queen who led her entire community to Islam and to avoid war, Bilqis. We know Maryam alayhi salam, the Quran, we have a chapter about Maryam alayhi salam. Whether a woman, what are the limits for women? But the majority of the ulama, I would say, and Imam al-Juwayni wrote this in his famous book, Al-Ghiyathi, that all positions, including being a judge, a woman can take except al-Khilafa al-Uzma or al-Imam al-Uzma. Yani the Khalifa cannot be a woman. And again, this is not coming from Hadith or Quran, but their understanding of the ulama because of the responsibilities and so on. So that is what many scholars say, that she can be anything. She can be judge, she can be governor, she can be anything. But al-Imam al-Uzma, she cannot. That's the only restriction. But other fuqaha said, no, she cannot be judge. She cannot be. Why is that? This comes from the context. Because women at that time, most of them, they were staying home. They don't know what's going on. And the judge must not only know the Quran and the Hadith, but also should know the kind of transactions, what's going on, what the custom and the tradition. If women are not involved in the social activities or political activities or economical activities, then how could she be a judge? But now we have women who get PhD in law and are top of their class, very sharp. According to many fuqaha, yes, if she's qualified, she can be a judge.
Questions that I've had in our community, I think if you would be addressed, it would be good. Number one, what are the rights or what is the proper questions of that a wali can ask, or proper reasons for why they may reject a suitor? This is something that we've got. And the other question is, what are the, in Islamic family law, what are the rights of the husband and the rights of the wife?
Well, two big questions. I'll try my very best in these few minutes. The first question is about to what extent the wali can use his authority to reject someone who wants to marry his daughter or his sister or something like this. The madhahib have different approach to this point, okay? So the concept discussed here is the concept of kafa'a or equality in marriage. Some madhahib, especially Hanafi madhab, especially Imam al-Sarakhsi wrote pages and pages in his book about al-kafa'a, and he actually quoted some hadith, Quraysh, بعضهم لبعض أكفاء والعرب بعضهم لبعض أكفاء, and so on. Hadith very weak, very unauthentic. But the notion was that for a man to be qualified to marry a woman, he has to be equal to her socially. And they actually talk about 5 or 6 criteria. One is al-Islam, al-ubudiyya or freedom from slavery, the income, the job, and the family. So that actually was a reflection to the custom at that time. Imam Malik and Ibn Hazm al-Andalusi, rahmatullah alayhi, Imam Muhammad ibn Hazm al-Zahiri, he said every Muslim man is equal to any Muslim woman. Islam, saying La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, makes you equal to any Muslim. So the Muslim slave is equal to marry the daughter of the Khalifa, who is Qurashi. All right, that's Ibn Hazm. And Imam Malik also said all these criteria that exist in other madhahib, he did not recognize them at all. All right. However, from practical perspective, and that's the rational evidence that Imam al-Sarakhsi and other Hanafi scholars used, is that if the objective of Sharia from marriage is to have peace and love and to continue this life, then it makes more sense for people to be close in age, in social status or income and so on. This would make them more likely to continue the family. But again, Islam, when it comes to these social issues, Islam did not make a clear cut about it. In other words, it left a huge space to the local custom or tradition to play out here. So, because if Islam said this, then it has to be universal. So Islam actually did not say how much mahr should be. What is the age difference between the husband and wife? It's up to the people. What kind of a job a man has to play and a job woman has to play. This is left to the people to make choices, which actually lead to the second question of yours, the responsibilities. Usually people talk about the man's responsibility and the woman's, but nobody talks about the family's responsibility. Right? There's no particular, when it comes to, for example, some cases, the woman here in America, she works and she makes a lot of money, and the husband decides to stay, take care of the kids. It's up to the agreement between the husband and wife. If she, mashallah, she works and she makes enough money, all right, and they have children, and the father, they both agree that the father will stay home and take, that's not traditional, but it's not haram, it's not prohibited. It's up to the people's choice. People have the right to make choices like this. So I'm not talking about the mutual rights. Not just the right of the man and the right of the woman. The right is, there are mutual rights: respect, love, fidelity, ta'awun al-birr wa taqwa, and so on and so forth. But who is going to do what? Who's going to wash the dishes after dinner? And who's going to cook? Who's going to go to the grocery store? That's all these choices up to the people to make choices. If the woman make money and the man makes money, who has the control over what? Originally, they have totally separate financial responsibilities. That's originally what it is. But again, I will pay the mortgage and you pay for the food and for Islamic school and so on. They can come to an agreement. Where the question of qawama is also one of the issues that's not really, because qawamuna also means that they have more responsibilities, right? Because rights and responsibility, the more right and authority you have, the more responsibility you have, all right? So the concept of qawama is there, obviously, but again, people have to make choices together based on mutual understanding. It doesn't have to be necessarily, I have this right, you have this right. It doesn't work this way. And those who try to do it this way actually end up having lots of conflicts and issues. Allahu a'lam. Yes. What time is the adhan? Okay.
Yes. For those who came from overseas under marriage contract in their country and this country and things go south, to separate, and then the wife wants to apply American law and he wants to apply his original law. Can you advise?
That's a very good point. Muslim community, I'm part of you guys, I'm part of the Muslim community, but Muslims are very selective when it comes to which law should we follow. I have so many cases when the wife wants to go to the American court and the Middle Eastern husband said, no. He told her, let's go back home, and once we arrive, I will take you from the airport to the court. We'll get everything settled, I promise. And she said, no. I'm not going to do that, but when you take me there, they'll get me nothing. You're going to take the kids, all right? So unfortunately, the Islamic family law is perceived as a pro-man, whereas the American family law is perceived as a pro-woman, right? So we as American Muslims, we really have to look at the so many various opinions that makes more sense to our presence. And this is the case, we're not talking about something new. That was the case in every place in the Muslim world. That's why I said in the beginning, we cannot find two identical Islamic family laws in Muslim majority countries. So I've seen cases also when the wife actually got the the American divorce. She was begging her husband to go to the Imam. He said, no, I don't want to see any shuyukh. And then finally one of the Imams told her, you know what, go to the American court. She did, after years, took years, and she got the divorce. And then she got the divorce and she got the spousal support and everything. Then he said, no, these American people are kuffar, let's go to the Imam. I know people by name. I'm not just making this up. I know. So, okay. Forget about all these American things. They are kuffar. We pay them taxes. We make an oath to respect the Constitution and the American legals. But when it comes to this money things, let's go to the Imam, with the hope that the Imam will give him much more. But guess what? The Imam actually looked at the facts, and his decision was almost the same as the American court. And many imams are the victims of the lashback that comes from some families, unfortunately. Right?
You spoke about the responsibility of the man and woman and how this based on agreement. Now, sometimes the inheritance rules in Islam justify by the responsibility. So does that reveal something that change the inheritance law?
No, that's a good question about the inheritance law, which also is kind of misunderstood. Women take half of the man only in 4 cases. Only in 4 cases. In many other cases, women get something and men do not get anything. And sometimes women get much more than men. Keep this in mind. That's a good point, Jazakallah khair. So in the case of this, people who inherit on the same level, like 2 children, a son and a daughter, or father and mother, brother and sister. So you are right, Islam gave women half of the man, what the man gets. But guess what? When the woman gets married, her money is her money, and her husband's money is her money. Right? So your son will get more, but he will be responsible to take care of you or your wife when you grow old, you don't have your own income. He has a religious responsibility to take care of you. And when he starts his own family, then he's responsible for paying the mahar and prepare the house of the new family and so on. So, but in case, for example, if someone passed away and he left behind, let's say, his wife and 2 daughters and 10 brothers. So the wife will get 1/8, and the 2 daughters will get 2/3, and the remaining will go to the 10 brothers. So in this case, his daughters and his wife got much more than what the man gets, his 10 brothers, if he has 10 brothers. So there are so many cases. It depends on the heirs who receive or take or eligible to receive his tarika. Right? I hope this gives some answer to your question. Yes, sir.
We are from another country. Immigrants here. Some people, Pakistan or Egypt or Somalia, they marry over there, and they translate the paper.
Translate the paper, yes.
When they come here, the government request to show us a husband and wife.
Right.
So why do they go to court?
What they call?
Why do they go to the court?
Why do they go to the court? They go to the court in God forbid, in the case of divorce.
No, because they are not.
If people are married anywhere in the world, and they can show that they are married, the government will recognize this marriage. They don't have to go to any court. You don't have to go to any court. Yeah, okay, I understand now your question.
Government, if they say like immigration, if they say yes, you marry, and then they say yes, you marry, this is our documentation, and they accept it.
Right. Absolutely. They don't have to, I understand your point. They don't have to register this marriage in the local county. Yes, absolutely. All right, yes.
And a follow-up on the inheritance question. I think that the main essence of the Islamic law is fairness, right? Can the Imam use this essence and make the judgment of the inheritance based on, who?
Okay. I actually discussed this particular point with many of my shuyukh, and Sheikh al-Qaradawi in particular, and he said no, because there is a clear Quranic text. You cannot play with this. If the text is super clear, okay, there is no room for ijtihad. There is room for ijtihad when the text is not as clear, has some ambiguity, or the text says nothing at all, so then the mujtahid will make ijtihad. But if the text is قطع الثبوت قطع الدلالة, the meaning is super clear. يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين فإن كن نساء فوق 2 لآخر الآيات. في موضع آخر فللذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين. So there's no room for ijtihad here. النص واضح. Allahu A'lam. I understand your point that he's saying that can a judge, let's say, not just an imam, a judge in the Muslim majority country said, okay, based on what I see, I will give this more than that. No, he cannot do that. The same question comes if someone has two children. One is very obedient and very nice to his father, and the other one is very rebellious and he drinks and he takes drugs. You cannot give this and prevent that. He has the right to get inheritance. Whatever he does with this money, that's his responsibility. Okay? So playing with the clear text, then they'll destroy the whole structure. So I really thought about this before. I thought about this, but the ulama said because the nas is wadih, qat'i dilala. You cannot play with this. But keep in mind, this particular legislation is part of the whole structure that comes with rights and responsibilities. And what we do is sometimes we try to take this from here and try to fix a different structure. It doesn't work this way. That's why Al-Islam قال يا أيها الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في السلم كافة. You cannot just take 30% from Islam and try to complement it with another 70% from somewhere else. It's not going to fit. Yes, we have two hands here. So, anyone? Exactly, that's a good point. That's excellent point. Actually, in Michigan, we have this workshop when we have a lawyer and an imam. They talk about how to write your will if you want your will to be done based on Islamic law. You don't even have to write Islamic law or Sharia or based on this madhab or that madhab. If the court or the judge looks at your will and he says, I want to give my son my house in this address, and I want to give my daughter $50,000 or $200,000, it's clear, then the judge will enforce it. The judge is not going to ask or is not concerned about why you wrote this way. You know why, because you want to apply the Islamic law, right? But the judge does not care about this. He cares about the clarity of the language. That's why every one of us should write his or her will, and they should actually ask or consult a lawyer if this will would be understood and applied and respected by the American court, right? But if you write something so ambiguous, like I want my will, my will to be distributed based on Islamic law. What do you mean based on Islamic law? The judge cannot enforce this. You have to be very specific. Allah Ta'ala alam. Yes, Akhi.
I wanted to make a comment that I came across in the news that somebody made an argument in court. Somebody was convicted of domestic abuse. That I'm from a different country, I'm from Pakistan, and this kind of relationship is, culturally. I think as a community, we need to really be vigilant of such news and act on it and really.
This is a real case. Jazakallah khair for raising this. This happened in New Jersey. And New Jersey, when the man actually used to physically abuse his wife, and the judge actually looked at this case, and his lawyer made this argument. He was practicing his religious right. And because the religious freedom of exercise is protected by the First Amendment, therefore, he's not guilty. And perhaps the unexperienced judge said, well, if he's practicing his religion, hit her. But this actually brought so much noise and controversy in the media, and this is where like Sharia, coming to take over movements. But when it went to a court of appeal, of course, the court of appeal actually changed the court order, and actually this brought plenty of discussion about Sharia and if your religion says that you every year should kill a child, for example, that's a very extreme example. Forget about freedom of exercise. Freedom of exercise is limited to the state law and public policy. You cannot exceed this with the people who are married to multiple tens of wives based on their belief or understanding. That's not going to be accepted. So there are limits to freedom of exercise. And I agree with you that some say, okay, well, Sharia gave me the right to beat my wife. That's not the understanding of Sharia. You are interpreting Sharia the way that justifies your evil doing. All right? So Quran is to be interpreted by the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Did the Prophet sometimes, or did the Prophet ﷺ practice this ayah that says, وَاللَّاتِي تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ فَعِظُوهُنَّ وَاهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ وَاضْرِبُوهُنَّ? Did the Prophet practice this ayah? Yes, he did. Hadith in Sahih Muslim. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in Aisha's house. It was her night, and after midnight, he got up sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he left the house. She thought that he's going to other wives, and she was upset because this is her night, right? But the Prophet ﷺ went to Al-Baqi', not far from his house. If you are familiar with Medina, he went to pray to the people of Al-Baqi'. She put her dress on and she followed him. And he ﷺ, after he finished his dua to the people of Baqi', on his way back to his house, he saw someone in darkness, walking, and then it was Aisha radiallahu anha, al-Mu'mineen radiallahu anha warda. So the Prophet ﷺ entered his house and he noticed that it was her. And he said, are you the one that I saw? And she said, yes. And the Prophet ﷺ understood why for a wife to leave her house in the middle of the night by herself, that was not right. So the expression has also must indicate that what you have done was wrong. Is there the difference between telling your son, don't do this again, all right? Or don't do this again. Or smacking, I told you don't do this again, right? Every one of these levels expresses different level of seriousness, right? So she said, hadith in Sahih Muslim, قالت فلهدني في صدري بأصبعه لهدني في صدري بأصبعه لهدة أوجعتني. I felt the pain of this. And he told her, have you thought that I will treat you unjustly? In other words, it was not appropriate for you to leave your house in the middle of the night like this. All right? So we need to understand that Islam does not give the man just a blank check to just go and beat his wife because he's practicing his right. That's absolutely wrong. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.